Good evening. I hope you're all doing well. Happy to have you all here once again. Today is a wonderful Thursday. So today we are, week 18. Yep. All right. So today we are going to look at, I think on Tuesday, we looked more on the angles of passive footprinting. And we looked at some scanning techniques, how to find the emails of people you've not met before, how to use tools like how to use NSLOOKUP, we looked at Have I Been Pawned? We also looked at, what's the name of the other tools we used? Can you tell me in the chats what are some of the tools we used on Tuesday? Yep, so we don't record office hours because we mostly talk about skating and ice hockey and fighting and all of that. So that's why we don't record it. But if there's any vital information that is talked about during office hour, I would personally share that information with the rest of the class. So that's why we don't record that. So I hope that answered your question, Siavash. Yeah, so we used Whois, Google Doc, we used Wapalizer. I love that word. And then we used, what else did we use? Whois, Google Doc, Wapalizer, NSLOOKUP, and then a few others, right? So once again, remember that before we do a class or phonebook.cz, yes, perfect, that one as well. And then we also looked at, the fact that I don't remember, you guys will lead me today. We looked at two different tools that help you find emails. There was Hunter.io, that was also very important. And then Dig, yes, but I did not demo the Dig, but yes, Dig was also part of it. So all these tools were used for passive recon, right? Where we are trying to gather information, but we don't want to have direct contact with the targets. Now we are shifting to the other side where we said, okay, let's take a look at, if you're talking about methods where we don't have access to the targets, what are some of the methods where we have direct engagement or direct contact with the targets? And that is where active footprinting or active recon or reconnaissance comes in. So today we're going to look at all of these tools. Everything here will be treated special, and then your assignments as well. And most of these tools here are active recon tools. And I expect that before the class, you would go in there, read the content, so that when you come to class, everything I'm saying is just a validation and a confirmation of what you have already picked up while you were reading, right? So, and then we're also going to look at a little bit of an enumeration as well, I believe. Yes, we will. For some reason, it's taking a while. Yes, so this is enumeration. Probably might have to take a look at this during office hour, because I think that's sort of assignments for next week. So anyway, we'll come back to that because that's a whole different ball game. So we are going to start. All right, can you see my slide?
Yep.
All right. So we are going to take a look today. Today it's going to be an extensive class because we are going to be jumping through hoops and through different areas. We are going to do a little bit of web development. You guys are going to be web developers today. And then after that, we are going to take a look at response codes, and then we jump into the demo for, we are going to jump into demos for some of the scanning tools and enumeration tools. So for example, Nikto, WP Scan, and then Go Basta, There Basta, we'll take a look at that. Now, it's in relation to the assignment, because the second assignment for this week is specialized scanners, and that is where we expect you to use some of these tools to gather information. So we are going to take a look at some of these tools so that it gives perspective on what you have to do during the assignment. So we'll look at how the internet or the web works. HTML, CSS, what they are. You may have heard of them before. Some of you know what these are, some of you do not. And then we'll look at HTML forms parameters, DOM, document object model manipulation, percent encoding, HTTP response codes, session and cookies, scanners, what they are, what tools we could use for scanning, what tools we could use for enumeration. We'll do a demo on both of them. And then we do our 10-minute tactical, which will be, as usual, our group project for today. Now, so far, we've gone through phase 1, which was footprinting yesterday. Today, we are about to do another, we're about to enter into another section within phase 1, which is where we are trying to do some scanning and some enumeration. So we will see all of that in action. And then phase 2 will be exploiting an attack, and then phase 3 will be maintaining access. Now, this is where Linux and Windows privilege escalation will come in. They are all engrossed over here. So in as much as these look like just one word, a lot goes into it. So within the course of the next few weeks, we'll take a look at that. Now, how does the web work? We have what we call the request response cycle. And the request response cycle is basically on the fact that whatever you search for on the internet, you are actually asking or making a request, and then you get a response. If you type in codingdojo.com, what you've done is you've made a request, and then what you get is the web page of codingdojo.com that is returned to you. So based on this diagram over here, you made a request to codingdojo.com at this point, and then codingdojo.com responded to you. So you make the request to codingdojo.com, their server or their web server would now respond to you. You will respond with the web page, or the page that you see will be returned to your browser. Now, in case you wanted to log in, and then check your assignments and all of that. For this type of information, because this type of information is a bit, we call these things responsive, or we call them dynamic contents, meaning that it's not static, meaning whatever you're asking for needs some operations on the server. So your student records are in the database, your logins are in the database, your transcripts, everything is here. So once you get into codingdojo.com and you want to log in, the server, which is the web server, would have to check for your student records in the database. And once they find it, they bring it back to the web server. So this is a web server. We call this a web server. This will be a database server. And we understand this when we do databases, because most of the time in the past, when you do a website, you only do just the webs. You only put your pages on the web server, because most websites are basic pages. The pages do not change. We call them static pages. But then now you may have to log in somewhere. You may have to get some information from somewhere. If you want to book a flight, there is a database that the flights have to be pulled from before they can be shown to you on the page. So that is why database servers are part of it. Now, all this will form part of the server that belongs to Coding Dojo. So when I make a request, if I do show me codingdojo.com, it might go through all of these. Even though the arrow is here, it doesn't mean it comes here first. Most of the time, it comes to the web server first, and then the web server would, if it needs certain information, it would go and get that information from other places. Now, with every request, there is a request line, there is the header, and then there's the body. Now, when you make a request, there has to be a response. If I mention your name, if I say Patrick will probably say, yes, are you talking to me? Right, that is Patrick's response. If I make a request, or if I mention Patrick's name and he doesn't respond, that means Patrick is not online, or Patrick is not available, or Patrick is not here. So if you make a request on the web, what you get is a response. And the response will contain what we call a status line, telling us about the information we are about to receive. Whether we really reached, was our request successful, did we get to codingdojo.com, or codingdojo.com is permanently offline and no one can access it. So that is where, then we have headers, which we'll see shortly, and then the body of the response. Now, with every request, there is what we call the GET requests, and then the POST requests. Now, this is how a GET request will look like in a browser. So with GET requests, it is used to retrieve data from a specific server. But then we use POST when you want to send information to the server, right? So I'm going to show that shortly. So if this is the server and I just want to get information from the website, mostly I'll use GET. If I want to just get the page, it will just come with GET. But then at a point where maybe you are sending login information, it's advisable that if you are sending or if as a developer, if I'm developing a website and I know that there is a form and I need user information, what I will use is that I will use what we call the post request, and we'll see that shortly. So post means that whatever you do will not be shown in the browser. So let me move back here. Then let's do a quick demo here. So let's go to Google. Right. If I say hello on Google, take a look at the URL site. It says google.com, right? But then if I say hello, yes, so like when you're submitting something like an assignment, anything is mostly use post, and we'll see that shortly. So if you can see, I don't know, this is pretty small, but if you can look here at the top, let me move what is here to this side. Good. So I can take out, let's take out the parts that is irrelevant. So this is what we have. Whatever is at the top, I've cut it short because I've cut it short from this side. We don't need all of that. So it's saying that https://google.com search ? Right? Whenever you see a question mark in a browser, most of the time it just means that we're about to provide some inputs that the server would need. So we are saying that we are about to search for something, but then we are waiting for an input from the user. And this is the input that came from the user. It is kill is equal to hello. You remember I typed in hello over here. So whatever I search for, we call this the query. So it depends on whoever created Google, whoever created the website, they could use a different parameter. So kill is equal to hello, meaning that the person's query is hello, and the source probably where my web browser and all of that. So I wish I had the voice though. I think the one that has the voice here is Jasmine. So if only she's ready to sing, then we can open the floor for her. But nice try. These are pure facts. I don't lie. So this is the so the query, whatever we're asking for is hello. The source, probably the browser we are using, and all of these are all part of the extra parameters, right? So in technical terms, we don't even need this part. We just need this. So this is the website. Now this is probably a page on the website, search, and then the question mark is saying that, hey, you're about to ask for a question, like you're about to ask for something. Now kill is the query. So what are we asking for? Hello. Now this method where whatever I entered going to the server is being shown in the address bar, or we call this the address bar. Whatever I entered being shown here means that this website, which is Google, is using GET requests. So with GET request, whatever you are sending to the server will be shown in the browser, which means that anyone could just go into your internet history. Anyone could just go into your internet history and then just see whatever, we just see that, okay, assuming, for example, assuming this was a login page, right? Assuming this was a login page and this was username is equal to Derek, and then mostly they'll use something like the N, and then they'll say password is equal to password, right? And I do this and I've sent it. Assuming whoever created the site does not have good protection and they use GET request for login. Now everything I'm putting here will be shown in the browser. So at any point in time, someone could just go into my history and then check and then probably see that, hey, this guy, I mean, that's not going to work, but I'm just trying to prove a point. So you are going to see that, see, everything I did is literally in the history part, which is the username and the password is there. So this is what makes GET requests very dangerous. So GET requests are used for requesting pages across the internet. But when you are sending vital information or sensitive information like username, password, credit card details, anything else, your user data, do not do this over the internet. Do not use a GET request. Use what we call a POST request. Now, a POST request, I'm trying to get this page. So with the POST request, everything I'm going to do here, right? If I do this, you'll notice that it's not going to change anything at this point. It says invalid email and password, meaning if we were using GET request, I would have seen something like this. Email is equal to this, admin dot blah, 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 password is equal to that, meaning that whoever created the site is using a GET request. But in this case where they are using a POST request, these guys are using POST. So with POST, we can verify that here by going to inspect. None of the, how do I close this? Oh. I know I've done something I can close. Let's see. Yep, good. All right, good. So this is just my own thing. Ignore the serve log. Right, so I'm going to try and log in again. And this is the only way you could view a post request because it's not going to show here. So the whole point is how do we find out what the user or the logins where they are going through? And they are going to go. I'm really trying so hard to figure it out. Let's wait and see. So I was trying to show you guys the request and then the response. All right, so and that is not really showing up here properly. But so when I go into this side of the page, this is a GET. This is my post. Just a sec. But anyways, this is a GET, but we can use this to explain the request response thing. So the request was made here, and then the response headers were made here, and then this is the response it got back. But this is just basic internet operations. It's supposed to be a login page. I have no idea why, but we'll come back to it. I created this page a long time ago. I've forgotten how. Let's see. Really trying to figure out what I missed. Wow, so many things are happening on this page. Let's log out, come back again. Finally. Found the post. Was right before our eyes. So login. Yeah, so this is post. So we have request URL, whatever thing we're asking for from the internet. Is this even clear enough? Let me see. How do I make this side bigger? Anyway, but I hope you can see this side of things, right? This whole, can you all see this part clearly?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
A little tiny, but we could see it.
Okay. There's nothing I can do. Okay, let's take a look at it. So I requested for this URL, HTTPS login, but it was a post, meaning that we are about to send some details that we don't want anyone to see, right? Now, as I said, post means whatever we are sending will not be shown in the browser. So if someone wants to go into my history to check it, they are not going to see it. So we have posts here, meaning that whatever we are sending is not going to show in the browser. And this login.php, the other login.php here was a get request, meaning that I was just getting the page initially. And anything I put here would have been shown on at the top side. But with the second one, this is a post, meaning that we are sending some data onto the other side. And whatever I was requesting, I had what we call request headers. So these are, I could say how long whatever I'm sending is the length, and then a few other details that I can't go into it. So we have what we call payload, which is what am I really sending by post? If I say I'm sending something by post, meaning I don't want it to show in the browser, right? So if you check here, this is the URL, this is the email, this is the password, and the submit is here, right? So that means whatever I'm sending will not be shown in the browser login, but it's shown here. And the only reason why I'm seeing this is because I'm able to track the request whilst it is happening. If an attacker comes in here, it will be hard for them to go back into whatever I've done before. So then this is what happens if we are making such requests, and it's that's the difference, and that is what most websites use. Any website you go to where you are trying to make, you are trying to put in your details, they mostly use a post request so that it's not shown in the browser, and that is not really good security, but it helps a little bit, right? Then we come to HTML, CSS, and with HTML, CSS, we are saying that it's as hypertext. HTML is a hypertext markup language, is a standard markup language for creating web pages, meaning it's not really proper programming language, but at the same time, you can put in specific things that would provide a proper structure for your content. So HTML provides display, it's used to structure the content on the web page. If you want your web browser, the browser, you all know what a browser is, Google Chrome, on and on and on. These are all browsers. Now, if you want this browser to show you a web page, you may need to structure whatever you are providing, right? Because that's the only way the browser can understand. So the browser understands the hypertext markup language. And in order to speak this language, you need to know the lingo or the syntax of the language. And we'll look briefly at some of a quick demonstration on that. And then HTML is just the structure, but then you may also need to style it up. You may need to provide some beauty, right? And that is where CSS comes in. We call it cascading style sheet. Cascading means that one after the other, whereby the lowest one will be the latest updates. We'll take a look at that. So a style sheet language is used to describe the presentation of a document written in HTML or XML. So as a style sheet, so assuming you want to color or you want to change the text on your page to a particular color, you use CSS. If you want to make it bigger, you use CSS. HTML is just giving you the structure. Okay, this is the title, this is the heading, this is the body, this is the conclusion. That is what HTML does. But CSS provides the beauty, the beautification, making it more presentable. And then CSS is useless without HTML. HTML can exist without CSS, but CSS needs HTML because what is it beautifying? It has to beautify HTML. So that is that's the difference between both of them. Now, HTML has what we call forms, and a form in an HTML, if you go to any website and you see a form, no matter the language it's written in, when the page is generated, or when the page is passed, or when the page is rendered through a browser, it will be rendered as HTML in its lowest form. And when we are creating a form in HTML, we have what we call input fields. So if I want to create a form at this point, there's something I need to put in for a checkbox, something I need to put in for text, something for radio buttons, dates, addresses, text area, drop-down list. Now, this is what we call a text field. So this, let me redo this. So this is a text field. Now, this is a radio button. So this is a date, it's so clear. And in as much as it says date, it means that if you want to show dates in your page, you need to say something so that it will be rendered or it will be shown as P. Now, this is how it looks in coding. So we say that, okay, we are about to provide an input field for a form, right? And that input field, you have to provide a type. So we say that, okay, the type is a date. And then that's it. So we say the type is a date, and then let's just end it there. We don't want to go deep into all of this. So this is how HTML tags look like. So when you say input type, input first says there's going to be an input field. Now the type will be a date, then it knows what to show, and this is what will be shown. Not this, but this, the box, the input field you're saying. If you want to put in an address, the address uses what we call the text area. So text area is this. So text area is this big one. So you see that this looks very similar to this, but then text area allows you to provide multiple lines of inputs. But input, regular text field or a text field is just a one line of input. So address is literally using the text area approach, where the address is just a text area. Now a drop-down list is the one at the top here. This is the one we call a drop-down list. So if I want to provide a drop-down list, you may not have to say input type date. No, you have to say something else, which I will not get deep into now. So let's take a look at one more thing that would need an input type like this. Let's see. So same with, I think we have a text area. No, text area is just text area, surprisingly. So text area will be text area. Radio button. So there's input text. So, okay, let's just do the text. So input type. Then if I do this text, it just knows that this will be given to me, this one line of text. If I do date, I get this. Now there's even more where you could say, okay, I want you to provide a phone number, right? No, just a number. So if I say input type is equal to number, what happens is I would not be able to put in text over here. It will only accept numbers. So this is how HTML works. And these are what we call tags. The input thing is a tag, and these are parameters to the tag. Now, we are going to move from here and then just show how this looks realistically, right? Where we are going to take a look at that. But besides that, does anyone have a question along these lines? I'm going to spin up my coding Visual Studio Code. Does anyone have a question? All right. Throw some ones in the chat if I've not lost you so far. Are you with me? Perfect. We are taking it one step at a time today, right? Now, let's delve into some coding, very quick coding. So Joseph is asking, what's the most common use of a misconfigured input field? That's a very That's a very good question. Does anyone want to answer that? What is the most common use of a misconfigured input field? So a misconfigured input field is whatever we saw in a case where we have an input. Let me move this on the side. Oh, okay. So you mean types of exploits. All right. So what is the most common use? So for example, there is a field for username and password, but then whoever created it is not checking the input on the other side. Meaning, if an attacker puts, let's say you're asking for my email, and then I type in 11111, which are numbers, the system should probably bring up an error and say that your email cannot be just numbers. But if the system does not tell me that I've provided only numbers and I need to check it, then that means that the input field is not being validated, which means it is misconfigured. So in that case, Joseph's question is, what would be the most common use? Like, how would attackers exploit such a thing? What are some of the popular ways where an attacker could exploit an input field? And from Andy is saying injections, and that's accurate. Because it is vulnerable and is not checking the inputs I'm providing, I can put anything there. And that is where SQL injection could come in. Other types of injections could come in based on the system that is being used. It could also be cross-site scripting, because if this input field is not being verified, or is whatever I'm putting in is not being validated, that means I could put a cross-site scripting code in there, which is JavaScript, and I could tell it that, hey, go into the system and tell me the user's session ID. Go in there and tell me the cookie, the value of the cookie. So yes, so Andy, that is accurate. Injections is accurate. It could also be cross-site scripting and all the other ones, but injection is one of the most effective and one of the most used when it comes to misconfigured input field. I hope that answered your question, Joseph. And then, so it is important to be familiar with this concept to aid in reconnaissance. Yes. It is important to be familiar, not to know them offhand, to know everything, but then at least understanding that when a request is sent, a response comes in will help. Assuming you become interested in web penetration testing, you may need to know what the request and the response means, what the difference between a get and a post means. So it helps to actually, so that in case you want to proceed or in case you want to go along those lines, you will be able to know what you could do or what you should look out for, so that when there's a vulnerability, you would know that this is why I'm exploiting this vulnerability. Now, I know I said that there's get and post, but then let me humor you that there's more than that. So there is what we call, hope you can see, there is get, there is post. Now these are what we call methods, right? These are methods that are used when we are talking about web service. Now, so getting, as you already know, is to go to a website and get the web page, as simple as that. Now, post is used to send data. So this is to get, I mean, just like the word, or receive, or request web pages. Now, the second one, which is post. So post is used to send data to a server. Let's clear these guys here. No. This is amazing. Anyway, yeah, I think I can do with that. All right, so it's used to send data to a server, and that data could include logins, right? Or maybe comments on a site, credit card, you know, something, a form, any form like forms. And then we have put or patch. All these are things programmers will use. So if you are maybe pen testing a website, and then you see that the programmer is using, or you are testing an API, and then you see that the programmer is using some of these things, you're like, oh, this is what this thing is here for. Okay, let me see if this particular method will allow me to do this or this and that, right? So put and patch is mostly not popular, right? Because you barely see it on the field, but it is used to update an existing resource. So assuming you already have records on a system and you need to, and the developer wants to update it, they will use put or patch. And then we have deletes, just like the name suggests. So with deletes, for that, we are just removing a resource or record. So maybe we want to take out your details, right? For that, we'll just do this. And then the last one will be probably we have, yeah, I think these 4. Yeah, it should be 4, 5. It could depend. Maybe there could be more. But then, all right, so these are the methods when it comes to web requests, right? So requests on the web are classified with these methods. The methods are also called actions. Or actions. So they are methods, they are verbs, they are actions. So what are we doing on the server? We are trying to get something. Okay, that means we are trying to request a regular web page. Now, if we are using post, it means we are trying to send data to the server. Now, all these are not being done by the user. All these are done by the developer of the application. But when you interact with the application, some of the things you are doing on the application, the developer picks them and then uses these methods to process them. Right? And then there is also the head. I tried as much as possible to not talk about the head, but Jasmine, the cat is out of the bag. So then there is the head, and then there is trace, and then there is options. So it goes on and on and on and on. So options are used to retrieve the server capability. Sometimes the head also does that. So let's just add it because Jasmine has brought it out of the bag. Yes, there's nothing secret when it comes to Jasmine. So options, they are used to retrieve the server's capabilities or functionality. So maybe some servers will say that they accept, they can allow you to zip the file or the document you're bringing. Some would say that this is the limit to what they can take, on and on and on. You could use options or head to get that information. All right. So whilst this being said, I'm going to clear this from the screen. Clear our drawings. And then we're going to go into, we're just going to come back into the page. All right, so at this point, we are going to just create a page, right, in HTML, as basic as that. Now, whatever I'm putting here, you can ignore that because it's just a syntax, right? So all I'm saying here is, well, I'm about to create an HTML page. So the document you're seeing is an HTML page. Now, the name of the document is professional.html. If you are creating a PDF file, you would say that professional.pdf. If it's a Microsoft document, Word document file, you say it's professional.doc. Now with HTML, you need to make sure the extension is correct. So I've already created the file before the class. So it's professional.html. And this is how the syntax starts. So before we even go there, let's bring up my favorite example. So can you all see my Microsoft Word in all its glory?
I will see VS Code, now Word.
You guys are trying to mess with me, and it's not going to work. So we have, so this is just a document, right? So I want you to visualize this and then we translate this to coding, like the HTML we're about to deal with. So we are just going to say professional heading. And then we are going to go down and say that let's say something. Yes, so Suleiman, you are absolutely correct. It should be index.html. That is if we are going to post it on the web, because most servers are looking for a page named index.html before they can just point to it, unless you specify that my initial page is not indexed. But in this case, for demonstration purposes, I just want it to be more relatable. That's why I'm using professional.html. So you're absolutely correct. It's just that I'm just trying to change this up. Right. Fantastic. So you are going to say professional heading, and then we are going to say this is the body of our website. And then we are going to go on to say that this is the conclusion. Basic as that, right? Now, when you are in Microsoft Word, the funny thing is in Word, this is all text. But then there's this section named heading 1, heading 2, title, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to change this professional heading to heading 1, which is here. And then it's going to style it up, make it big. As you can see, it's looking big. The coloring is just because it was done. It's already set that heading 1 should have all of that, that blue coloring. I should have changed that. So professional heading is here, the body of our website. This is the conclusion, and then we are done, right? So basically, if we go into coding, we could reproduce this. So this is the heading, this is the body. So all of this is the body. Then the body contains this. That's it. Now we are going to change this. Now, assuming we want to just change the color of this to something else, for that we are just going to come here, and then we are going to probably pick, let's say, green. So then I've changed it manually. Now, in terms of CSS and HTML, we said that HTML is the structure of the content, what we are seeing. So we have the heading here with its content. We have the body with also its content. But then if we want to change the coloring, what will we use between HTML and CSS? What will we use for the coloring? CSS. And what is the meaning of CSS, people? Fantastic response. What's the meaning of CSS? Magic? Yeah, that's so close, Matthew. Cascading style sheet. Perfect. So then we are going to translate this design into a website. You're going to see that shortly, right? It will be a locally hosted web. It will just be local, not on the server, but you see the demo here shortly. So I'm going back into my my VS Code. So VS Code is an application. It's called a, what do they even call it these days? It's a text editor. It's an IDE into development environment. Wow. Something along these lines. Then the nutshell is used for developing sites, right? So it's one of the best. And then, so this is how I'm going to start. Let's just start with the content as raw as it is. Now in HTML, once you've specified, you have to tell us what you are using. You could decide to not even put this here and the site is still going to render. But we are just trying to do best practices. So I'm going to be here and then I'm going to say, okay, now we are about to start coding. And so I need to do this. And as you can see, once I put in, it does this. So what you see here, we have 2 HTMLs and then one with a backslash before the HTML. So all these are what we call the tags, right? So these are all tags. And this is the opening tag, and then this is the closing tag. Meaning that what you are seeing, whatever you see in between here is that the HTML thing. That means everything I'm doing here would be HTML. Now, if I come here and then I say that, okay, I want to start a paragraph. Now, this is how we do paragraphs in HTML. So paragraphs will use P, and you could see that it's also being closed with a backslash P. So greater, less, So it's a less than, and then a greater than in between it on both sides. So we use this to open it, meaning that everything you see after this P is a paragraph. Until you see me saying that I'm done, don't stop. Now, when it gets here, it's going to see P with a backslash, meaning that the P you started, it's time for you to end it. So whatever you're going to see here will be something different. So if I put Derek is happy, this will be a paragraph. Now, this paragraph is under the HTML, meaning that everything you see within this should be considered as HTML. If I want to do a heading, I also need to say something else, on and on and on and on to the end, right? So let me clear this up. So we call this the opening tag and then the closing tag. Unfortunately, I know some of you may be asking, why are we not closing this? That guy is an island on its own. You don't do, you just do this and you leave it like that. And it's going to just do what it needs to do. So for this, we don't close it. So we have HTML and then we have HTML here. So now we need to put our content here. So from our website, let me just bring the content of the website down here. When we are done, I'm going to clear it. This is what our website should be like. Professional heading. This is the body, and then this is the conclusion. So this is a heading, right? So in order to do headings in HTML, we use what we call H. So just like Microsoft Word, there's H1, H2, H3, up onto H6, H6. So I'm going to say H1. H1 means you're going to get the biggest heading all over the universe. So let's say H1 will probably be so big. So let's say if I say hello, and I render, let's just render for now and see what's going to come up, right? So I'm going to run. I'm going to run without debugging. I will use Chrome so you can all see what's showing. Can you see this? Can you see the page on the right side of the screen?
Yes.
With hello. So whatever I put in here has been rendered in a web browser, which is Google Chrome. Now let's change this to H2. As I told you, there are different types. So I'm going to reload, then it becomes smaller. If I change to H3, we need heading 3, it becomes smaller. Every heading type, these are all pre-configured. So every heading type reduces it. So we want the biggest, which is H1. And then as I said, this is what we are trying to do. So H1 will be professional heading. And then now we need to do a paragraph. And what tag do we use to do the paragraph? I explained that before I even came here. What tag? What letter do we use? I'm going to start. It was a P. So we are going to set up a paragraph and see that, hey, we are about to put in a paragraph. And that paragraph this is the body of our website. Put it here. And then I'm going to do the same thing again for the conclusion. So P again. And then put the conclusion. Whether you put in space before or after, it doesn't really matter. It's all the same. So I'm going to clear this. And then we are going to run it again to see if it's going to show something. Did you see the thing on the right? And this is a web browser. This is not Microsoft Word. This is a browser. So all that we've done has been rendered in a browser. So that's why we say that HTML is always rendered in a browser. So if I right click on the page and I click on view page source, let me focus on just that one. All right, so if I do view page source, I right click on the page anywhere, do a view page source. So it's going to show me what code has been rendered to show this. That's what's happening. What code? So now when I go here, can you see HTML here, professional here, PP, HTML. So sometimes you could go on any page. Let's go on Google and check this out. You could go right click, go to view page source, prepare to be amazed. And this is Google's page. Whatever code is loading all of this, that's it here. It will not make sense because, yeah, so many things are going on, but this is it. So let's just take a look at one more thing from Visual Code. Let's just do CSS and then we are done. We're not going to do any JavaScript today. So now we want to style the site, right? We want to sort of make it look good because from our Microsoft Excel, from our Word document, which is what you're seeing, our title was changed to green. So let's go back and then change that title to green. Now, in order to change anything here, you need to specify what you're trying to change, and then you change it. So this is how we are going to change such a thing, right? You don't need to know what the syntax means, but this is how it works. So now there is a part of the page where we call the head. Now, head means that whatever you see here should be processed before we start processing the body of the content. Wait, am I wrong? I think the body will be processed before the head. Any of them, one of them is accurate. But then this is where, if you want to put CSS, we could put it here, we could put the CSS here, or we could put it somewhere else. I don't want to go deep. All right, so good. So the head is processed before the body. All right, thank you. So the head will be processed before the body. So we say that let's process this, whatever is here first. And then now let's come to the, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I haven't done HTML in a long time, so pardon me. So head is also part of the, it's a sub part of the HTML, because this is the whole content we are dealing with, right? So let's, so let me do something quickly. Good. So I missed a few things earlier when I was explaining, because I tried to make it very short. So this is what we have. There's a structure, HTML is here, and then under HTML, we have the head, and then we have the body, and then we are done. So the head part will be processed first, because as a human being, you go to your head before you get to the body, even though the head is part of the body, but this is how it works. So if you want something to be done before the body is processed, it will be done. And then now you come and deal with the body. Now the body is where all the content was. So I'm going to put everything here. Right. So have you noticed what I'm doing? I've created a proper structure so that you could see how it's being rendered. So all of this, the HTML contains the head and then the body. But then the body contains the content we've already looked at, which is professional heading and then that. Ignore all of that. I just wanted you to see the proper structure. So now we want to style whatever we are doing, and we'll put that here in the head section. We want to provide some CSS. So for that, we'll say it's time for style. Just like that. And then we have to now specify some beautiful things. So then we are going to say, we want to change just the heading. So you need to specify what you're changing. What tag are you trying to change? It's H1, right? Is the heading H1 or PP? Which one is it? I mean, I said it, but I'm still going to ask. What are we changing? Is it H1 or P? If you want to change, yes, H1. So then we'll say H1. And then we just put some curly braces on there. Let me just move this below so that, stay behind it. Good. So what's happening here is, so what's happening here is I'm about to change something, which is H1, but then I'm going to put its code in between these curly braces. So now I need to put the code in here, and the code is that color, this is CSS syntax, is different from HTML. So color is equal to green. And I put a semicolon behind it. Now look at the structure. Style, meaning we are about to specify some CSS content. And this is how CSS works. Tell me what you're trying to change. Is it P? If it's P, I only just need to change H1 to P. And once I change H1 to P, that means the content, the PP, all of them are going to change. The color is going to be green. So in this case, it's H1 we want to change. So let's share our full screen with the browser, which I don't know where it's going to. Where's the browser? So that's the browser. Close this one. Good. So I'm going to close that, and then we are going to run it again. run without debugging. And then as you can see, this is what we have. Professional heading. This is the body of our site. And then this is the conclusion, just like we have over here. Now, assuming we wanted to change the paragraph instead of H1, I just change this to P, and then I run it again. And as you can see, the body has actually changed color. Now, this is how CSS beautifies HTML. So in a nutshell, we are now professional programmers after this 15 minutes demonstration on CSS, HTML, and all of that. So we are going to jump out of this. I hope this was clear. I hope this provided better perspective on how the web works and how probably the easiest language of all time, or easiest, I don't want to call it a language, but I mean, it qualifies. So can you see the code is here? P color is equal to green, and everything is intact. All right. At this point, do you have a question? Any other question? All right, was that clear? Was like those someone in the chat that made sense to you all? All right, perfect. So we've done request response to see how it works. We are going to look at what the response codes are shortly. And then we also looked at what HTML is, what CSS is, and how the two work together to give us an amazing web experience. Now, DOM manipulation. DOM is the document object model. And the document object model is basically, in plain terms, is what is generated after your browser processes the HTML, right? So it can be retrieved programmatically. So what we have here is that in as much as you see HTML is blurred, but even as much as you see HTML head, title, my title, body, href, h1, I think this is a slightly different from what we did, but I'm so sure that there are so many things you see here that you are familiar with now after the demo we just did. Title, I did not talk about. Anchor tag, which is for links, I did not talk about. But H1, at this point, you are all masters of the H1 tag. So for that, you've seen body, you've seen HTML, you've seen. So now, when this is coded, this is what happens. When the browser renders it, whatever you see in the browser, what happens is that it is changed into a document object model where this is what's happening. And you remember I told you there's a structure. So everything is under HTML. So this is the HTML, which is the root element. And then it's separated into two, the body, which I showed you, and then also the head. Now the head could contain this and this and that. Now, this is not just for fun and not just for beauty. It just means that once it is rendered into the browser, you can use a few codes in JavaScript most of the time to programmatically pick out one of them and then manipulate it with code. So you don't need to use HTML, you don't need to use CSS, but then you could say that documents, I want you to go into your tag and find me the body tag, this code. And then that body tag, I want you to change the color. So the codes could look like JavaScript, which I don't want to touch today. But then this is how we are able to probably pick out an element with codes. No matter the programming language you are using, you could come in there, go through this line, and find this particular guy and then manipulate it directly with codes, right? Now, in this way, this also aids in cross-site scripting attacks, because then anyone could just pick a tag and then manipulate it, or say that, hey, can you change this tag or the content of H1 to the user's session ID? And that can be dangerous along the line. Now, percent coding. Now, on the internet, what happens is that the internet understands a particular language that we do not understand, right? Which is, if I do this, Derek Brown, the URL side of web browsers or websites or web servers cannot really work on spaces. So in order to show that this is a space. Oh, there was a footballer named Derek Brown. Interesting. So in order to work on that space, we have what we call encoding, right? URL encoding. So if you could see here, let me pick that out and then put it here.
Is that why you were late to the meeting the other day, Derek? You were busy playing for the Panthers?
I mean, I wasn't supposed to reveal my second life, but here we are.
Oh, shoot. Sorry.
I mean, I need to take this out of the recording at the end of the day because, yeah, never heard of him. But anyway, so back to the thing, right? So can you see what happened? Derek Brown, I had space in there, but then the space was replaced with a plus. So this URL encoding. So before it gets to the server, it has to be changed in a way that the server will understand. So let's go to this site, which is W3 Schools. The link is in the slide, so you're going to see that. And so if I do, let's say, Derek Brown, besides plus, other sites will use different methods. So let's go into the encoder. Good. So if I put in Derek Brown, this is what URL encoding, this is what I get. Now, I wish there was a different one. Okay, this is percent encoding. Okay, so percent encoding is where we are. Oh, okay. I get what's happening. So let's go back to the slide, right? So it's also referred to as URL encoding. It's a mechanism to hide the information we are sending in a request. So for example, if I want to probably use a space in whatever I'm sending, I may need to put in a space, or I may need to put in %20, right? So the whole point is this Derek Brown we are seeing here, where Google use plus. In other terms, some people would prefer to use %20, which is the ASCII, right? Which is the ASCII representation of space. So anytime you put in %20, I don't know if you could see here in the slide, %20 over here is the code for spacing. So in ASCII, URL encoding is done in ASCII, and ASCII is just a whole different thing. When we do buffer overflow, you see ASCII again, you see 6161 a lot, but then that's it. So anytime you want to use space, most servers will use %20. Only few of them will resort to using the plus, which is Google and a few other places, but mostly if you want to use that, is this. Now, how does this help? It helps because maybe you want to put in a code that is supposed to disrupt a website, let's say cross-site scripting or some JavaScript code, which will look like this. Just a sec. So if you want to put in JavaScript code, which is supposed to look like this, scripts, and then there's space. So whatever you do, there's an issue. I want to do JavaScript, scripts, and then you put in your code, alert, you give some space. Now, if you put this in the URL of a website, it's not going to work because you have spaces in between. So in order to make this work, you replace that space with what a web browser would understand, which in this case, if we check this chart, we replace that space with %20, and then the web browser would proceed in processing whatever you have provided. So that is the idea of where % encoding comes in. If you want to do A, and you feel like there is a firewall that is going to stop you from typing in A, you will just replace that A. For example, this alert, if I want to put in A, I will just replace the A with %61. Now, can you check the chat and then tell me what I need to do if I want to do L? Chat, let's go. If I want to do an L, %6C. Perfect. Let's go. What about E? We are encoding that whole thing in % encoding. %6C. What about let's see. Let's do less than this one. The less than sign. Anyone? From the chat, find the less than sign, tell me the percent encoding. OE. Nope, so close. Less than, not greater than. So the OE was greater than, so less than, yes, perfect. So percent OC. So can you see what's happening here? So even if I copy all of this, assuming the browser has an antivirus, a file or whatever that is checking these things and say, hey, that's a script. All I would do is just change everything I want to do into percent encoding. And then once I copy that and put it in the browser, they won't be able to figure out what I'm really trying to type. But then the web server would understand that, oh, these are ASCII characters, these are percent encoding, and let me just translate them into ASCII. And before you know it, you get what you initially wanted, and then your attack is working. So that's another interesting way of evading security in some cases. All right, now when it comes to HTTP, we have what we call HTTP response codes. And if you visit a site and your response is 200, that means that yes, it's successful. If it's 1XX, which is anything from 100 to 199, it's informational. If it's 3XX, for example, 301 is a permanent redirect. If you see 302, it means it's temporary. Now, client error is 4XX. If you see error 404, I think most of you have seen 404 before. 404 is just telling you that, hey, whatever you're looking for is not found. So probably check whatever you typed, check the page you typed, and then try again. And then 5XX, which is 5, probably will be error 500, means there's a server error, which means it is not your fault. It's not because you typed in a wrong URL. It's just because the server might have been going through an attack, or the server cannot process your request right now. And it is used to determine where an issue lays. So whatever you have, you use these response codes. And when we get to using some of the specialized scanners later, you are going to see some of these response codes showing up, and then it would be very easy for you to visualize them. All right, then we have sessions and cookies. Now, sessions and cookies, in simple terms, these are ways where we could store a client's information so that if they are browsing or you're on Facebook and then you turn off your computer and then you come back, let's say you've logged in and you come back, let's say 4 hours later, and then you try to log in again, it's able to pull up and say, oh, you were here, let's continue from where you left off. Or sometimes it's even able to remember that you are still logged in and then it doesn't log you out. It uses what we call sessions and cookies. Now, the main difference between the two of them is that with sessions, they store a unique code or some piece of information on your device. They store some information on your device. So then we have, let's say for sessions, they might store your username or maybe the time you logged in and how long it will take for your session or the period where you are using the website to expire. So then it's mostly stored on the server, right? So whatever server you are using, if I'm browsing Facebook, my session information is being stored on Facebook's system. But if the site, and this is not, I don't choose whether to use sessions or cookies, it's determined by the developer. Now, if the developer opted to use cookies, cookies will be stored in my browser. So with that one, if I decide to clear my browser or my browser cache or my browser storage, that means I've lost all my cookies. And cookies are basically user information. I used to hold user information. The word is fancy, but it's just like a storage space to hold some user information. That's it. Now, cookies are so small because they can only hold just 4 kilobytes of information. However, sessions can hold 128 megabytes of information. All right, so that's a good question by Vidison. So as a bonus skill, considering the type of jobs we'll be applying for, should we prioritize learning Python or HTML? That's a tough question. When it comes to programming, I try as much as possible not to point people into a particular programming language. But based on the jobs you're applying for, you are not applying for a job as a developer. You may not probably even develop in your whole course of your pen testing career or your cybersecurity career. However, it's advisable that you should try to understand some code, try to know how code, like, work. Like today, we just did some basic syntax. Some people would probably go further to understand or do a quick course on HTML to understand the whole syntax, not because they want to be developers, but they want to understand how it works, so that if they get to meet something like that, it would make sense to them. But especially in cyber, most of the scripts and stuff and similar stuff you find are mostly done in Python, not in HTML. HTML is important because almost everything would in the end up in HTML. But then when it comes to Python, the scripts you may be running, and some of the scripts we'll be running and showing in class may have been written in Python, and I will try to explain them as easily as I can. So some people would prefer to go with Python because it is closer to, like, most of the things you might encounter in cyber would either be written in Python or some other thing. Rarely would you see one written in HTML. However, HTML is like the foundation of all things, and it's just a basic thing that helps you gain perspective on how things are done. So you don't need to do a full course on HTML or Python, but especially with HTML, just a basic overview of how it works and how the syntax is really helps a lot. I hope that answered your question, Vedasan. All right. So for our 10-minute tactical, we are going to create a payload today. And I think I closed my Kali. Let me bring that up. Now, while this is working, after 10-minute tactical, we are also going to look at the tools, the various tools that will be needed for specialized scanning and all of that. So we're also going to look at that. Can you see my Kali? Can you see my Kali?
No, unless I'm frozen.
Wait, am I the one frozen?
Based on the chat, I think so.
Mamma mia. Still bad?
It's laggy, but we still see the 10-minute tactical. We see the slides.
Still?
Nope, now we see Callie.
Took a while. All right, let's go. So today we are going to create what we call a payload. And we are creating this payload because next week we are going to learn how to create a payload, send it over to our victim or our target. Wait, you guys still can't see my Kali?
We can see it.
Okay, perfect. So we are creating what we call a payload, and a payload is basically a program that we use to exploit a target. We'll go deep into it next week. Now, this will be our 10-minute tactical, where the whole point is, maybe I found the email of a person and I want to attack them, but I don't know what to do. So I'm going to craft a nice phishing email, send it over to them, tell them, hey, you've won a promotion, blah, blah, blah. Click on this to change or to access the price. And once they click on it, it may download on their systems. They may make a mistake to install it. And once they try to install it, I will get access to their system. So we are going to learn how to create this program that can be used to get access to people's system today. And then next week, we learn how to create it, create all the multiple variants of it. And then after that, we'll learn how to put it on the victim's machine. That's on, I think, next week, Tuesday. We get it on that machine. And then once we get it there, we run it, and then we get access to the victim's machine. So today we are doing that step 1 to learn how things work. Next week, we'll go deeper into that. All right. So we are using a tool named MSF Venom. And MSF Venom allows you to, I think on the last week, Thursday, I talked about MSF Venom very briefly. I said you might need it for this and this and that. But because there's a 10-minute tactical, I'm just going to show you how I would create an MSF Venom. Let's go back to the slide. So there is a cheat sheet. I don't think I need to even explain so much today. So I'm going to go here. Can you see the slide?
Yes.
Perfect. So we are going to use the MSF Venom, which was a part of Metasploit, which is MSF console. And then now it's just separated as an individual tool, which we could use, but it's closely related to Metasploit. So we are going to craft a payload, preferably reverse shell, and then we are going to use a cheat sheet because it's going to show us what code to use. I don't want you guys to figure out what to use. And then after that, whatever tool you have, you go to virustotal.com and then upload whatever you found to the site. Once again, we create the payload and then we go to VirusTotal, upload it. That is our 10-minute tactical. Now, this should not take us more than 10 minutes today because this is very short. So we get into breakout rooms, we move into action. So I'm going to click on this cheat sheet, then go onto the site. So this is an MSF Venom cheat sheet. It tells you what you could do, but we just want a reverse shell based on our explanation. So there's the reverse shell code. You don't need to do anything. Just scroll down to reverse shell, and then you copy the code, and then you go back into your Kali, and then you generate it based on the code, and then you upload it. So let's go back to Kali. Let me know if you could see my Kali.
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to paste that code here, paste clipboard. Perfect. So this is what we have. I have MSF Venom P with some gibberish here, and then L host with some gibberish, L pot with some gibberish, F and then reverse.exe. So P is the payload we are trying to create. What we are creating is a payload. So the payload, we are picking it from the Windows directory, and we want it to use Metasploit, which is part of Metasploit, and it's called a reverse shell. We'll explain that next week properly. Now, regardless of that, we have L host, and who can tell me what L host is? I think we've met it before during Metasploit, MSF console last week for Eternal Blue. What is L host? Local host, yes, or listening hosts. Yes, whatever you are listening from. So what you will do is we are going to change the L host to your IP address. Now, how do you find your IP address in Kali? ifconfig. So I do my ifconfig. I see that my IP is ETH0, 10.0.2.4. So I'm going to come here and then put that here, 10.0.5, it was 5.4, sorry. And then what is L ports? What is L ports? Listening port. So where I want to listen from, right? Good, our port you are listening, perfect. Thank you, Rob and Joseph. So now for this, you could choose anything. Most people usually like to reside on 5555 for whatever reason. You could choose any port you want. You could go as big as you want. Just do not exceed 65,536. Stay in that range. I like 4 figures because I just don't want it to clash with any other service that is running. Now, F is the format. What format do we want? Okay, we want the format to be EXE. And where have you seen EXE before? On which operating system does EXE work on? Windows, exactly. So if you are, most of the tools you have on Windows uses the .exe extension. So once I do that, then I do what we call the redirect. So this is the redirect sign, which is greater than. So redirect means that the output of this should be redirected into a file named reverse.exe. That's what we are doing. MSF Venom, I want you to create a payload for me. What payload? This payload, which we copied from the other side. Lhost, I need to change that to my IP address, which is my Kali's IP address. Lport should be my Kali's, any port I want on my Kali. And then F should be specified. What format? I want it to be a Windows executable, EXE. MSF Venom has specific, it has Android, which is APK, it has a few others. Then when you're done, I want you to redirect the output of this and then store it in a file named reverse.exe. So I'm going to press enter. And then let's see what we are going to get. It could be named anything. Yes, thank you, Joseph, for that question. You could name it as anything you want. So the final size of the exe file is 73 kilobytes. Yeah, kilobyte. No platform, ignore all of these warnings. It was selected by default. No platform was selected, but Windows was selected because of the payload, on and on and on. And then the payload was just 354 bytes. But then the final size of the file is 73 kilobytes. Now, yes. Thank you, Jasmine. Yes. In as much as you could name it anything you want, make sure that the extension is the same as the format you picked over here. So .exe. You could even name it Derek.exe and it should work. Oh, wait. Thank you, Jasmine. So now let's check for the file. It should be in my Kali folder. Yeah, reverse.exe. That's the file in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the site virustotal.com, and you all know how to use VirusTotal. Am I right? Can you confirm in the chat if you all know how to use virustotal.com? Do you guys remember? Yes, perfect. So all you have to do is to go to virustotal.com, upload this file on there, and then you would see the results and then discuss it in the group. Like, okay, this is what I found. They said it's this virus, they said it's this virus, and then we are back here. All right. So Jasmine is going to share the information on Discord. And then once it is shared, we are going to go into our breakout rooms now. And then our time starts now, 6:25, and we'll be back at 7:35 Pacific time. Right. And I know that some of you might want to drop off because you have other, you have exceeded some time. If you want to drop off, is absolutely fine. It's recorded, so you can always come back into follow the recordings. All right, so breakout rooms have been created. All right, let's go. We'll be back here to continue with our specialized canvas. Oh, Andy, yes. I don't know if you're still here, but yes, yeah, he's gone. Oh, Jasmine, I was about to send you the thing, but it looks like you've already done it. Thank you.
No problem.
Perfect. So that was a quick 10-minute tactic. So next week we are going to explain all the parts of it, as I said earlier, and it's going to be amazing. Anyway, do you have any questions? And oh, Andy, so I think per the question, all right, Jasmine is typing an answer. But I noticed that I think I was in your breakout room, and I noticed you guys did what you just said. So, I mean, you did the SHA thing, and then.
Yeah, so it actually didn't work at first. So we were trying to figure out what was going on with that. But we believe that it's because this file isn't in their database or something. So when you upload the file first and then use the hash, it works because it knows of the file, but otherwise it doesn't.
Oh, okay. So once the file is in there, it recognizes the hash, and then it could work.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, so moving on, we are going to look at how to scan for vulnerabilities, because you remember we said scanning is fine. But then with enumeration, we are now going deeper into the target, trying to find out extra information about the target. And we may need certain tools. Now, these tools are more personal. These tools are more, they're going to have contact, or they would engage the target. So some of these tools, if you are using them, it will surely show up in the system logs, right? And so we're going to take a demo on Dirbuster, WP Scan, GoBuster, and then even Nikto as well. So GoBuster is a tool used to brute force URLs, which includes directories, files, DNS, subdomains, etc. Look at that. And then GoBuster, Dirbuster do the same thing. The only difference is that Dirbuster has a user interface you could use, GUI, but GoBuster does not. It's just a terminal thing. So Sexploit is used to find exploits available, and it's pretty okay. So before I continue, Dirbuster, for the assignment, you don't need Dirbuster to complete. I've not seen anyone who has ever waited for Dirbuster to complete a scan in my life. So mostly for Dirbuster, you only need it to run for like 15 seconds or 20 seconds, and then you have the information you need. That's how easy it is. Unless you are in a real life engagement where you are trying to, maybe you are really trying to find things that are hidden. So that's the case where you need to wait it out. But probably after an hour or 30 minutes, you don't really need to go that far, because if it's hidden that deep, then that means you weren't supposed to find it in the first place. So yes, thank you, Jasmine, to us. I didn't see yours. So Dirbuster would brute force the directories. Sexploit helps you to find exploits, which would go deep into, I think, later when it start. Yeah, when we're doing that Linux and Windows privileges, like Linux and Windows privilege escalation, we'll go deep into Sexploit because we'll find our own exploits and then use them. Now, Nikto scans web servers for vulnerabilities. So it's going to scan and tell you, hey, this is the vulnerability I found. I think you're running this server. It's old, change it. And then WP Scan is a specialized scanner. There's a reason why your assignment is named specialized scanners. So this is me giving a hint. So WP Scan is a specialized scanner designed for testing the security of websites built using WordPress. WordPress is a CMS, which is a content management system. So content management systems basically provide an interface for you, the developer, where you don't have to code everything by hand, like the HTML you saw, but then all you have to do is to drag and drop things. If you want a header, you just drag it and drop it. You just do that. So WordPress provided that, and it's the most popular, it's the most used CMS, content management system in the world right now, and it has so many attacks. So we are going to look at WP Scan. I'm using it to scan a WordPress site, and then moving on from there. We are going to go to my Kali, just waiting patiently on the other side. Let me know if you can see my Kali.
Yep, we can see.
All right. So I need to close there. No, I need it. So I have a different machine which is running let's do that. So I have a different machine in my VirtualBox named OWASP, which has several sites running. So I'm going to start that now. It will not show on the screen because you all don't have that particular machine. So I will just run it on my end. And then I would find the IP address, and then I will use that to move on. So it's going to provide a server that has almost all the OWASP vulnerable machines on there. And then we are going to use that for our attack today. So with Kali, I'm going to clear the screen. Now today we are going to run several tools, right? We are going to run, let's rename this to GoBuster. We are going to rename this to our next tool, which is Nikto. And then we are going to run the last one, which will be WP scan. Let's beautify it. All right, so we have all these three running here. We are going to run the tools as and when we need them. This is my IP address. Once again, I need to find the IP address of my target. And I told you that any IP address that comes before my IP address mostly belongs to, this is if you are using VirtualBox. So the other machine is turned on. You don't see it on the screen, but it's turned on over here. So the command I'm going to use is my IP address is 10.0.5.4. So I'm going to use my favorite nmap command, nmap sn. So nmap sn meaning that don't do a port scan, just find me the site. And then n will say don't do a DNS scan. And then my IP, which is 10.0.5.4, I use that 5, and I'd say from 0 to 255. Give me information. Whilst it's running, I'm going to open my leaf pad over here. Or you could also come in here, type in mouse pad, and then you have the text editor on the side. And the thing about Kali is, if Kali is doing something and then you start to click on multiple things at the same time, whilst you are not seeing that effect on the screen, your Kali might freeze out. So sometimes it's good to allow Kali to some breathing space. So once you click on something, wait for it to show before you decide to do what needs to be done. So I'm going to run this command. And then I'm going to get my response, which says that I told you anything before mostly belongs to a VirtualBox app. So 10.0.5.4 is mine, and then this is my target today, 0.5. So same IP address over here. .5. That's my target. Now I need to clear the screen because I'll need it for something else. Good. So at this point, we are assuming we found an IP address. We have no idea, but this is how we mostly start. Either you do an nmap scan, which you could do at any time, or you would do a directory scan, right? So most other times, other people will just decide to put in that website in the that particular IP in the browser in case they have a website going on. But let's do one more. So I'm going to put in that IP address in there. .5.5. They should check if it's going to give me something, and then this is what I get. That means there are websites being stored there, or apps broken application projects. So it contains so many vulnerable applications I could attack. And then there's a WordPress site. That is what we are targeting today. So if I click on that, this is what I have. Now, besides this information, I could minimize that and then come in here. And then once the URL has been given, I could just say, okay, I've seen that there's a website, or I've seen that you have a page, but I don't know what else is there. So I'm going to need a tool named Directory Buster, which I click on the blue thing here. Then I'm going to go in there, Buster. Click on the tool, it's going to provide a user interface. Now, when the user interface comes up, all I'm doing is, hey, I know you have a website. I know, then this is how I'm going to think. I also know that websites have directories and pages and all of that. I don't know where they are, but I just need you to probably help me find out what I'm looking for. So I need to put in the URL, which is HTTP, whatever it is, and then the port if I want. If you put in the IP address without HTTP, just like it's written there, it's not going to work. So I need to provide the target IP address, .5, and then that's it. Now I may probably want to do not go faster, but I need to find a list of directories that it has to perform this attack against. So browse. And these things are mostly located in user share. You remember when we found our rock.txt file, same thing applies here. So I'm going to look for it and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to click on this thing, click on this / here, because that means I'm going to the root directory of my Kali. There's like the hard disk of my Kali. So I'm going to go into user, going to go into share, and then I need to find a directory named Derbasta. That's it over here. Now I go in there and then I go into word lists and then I have to pick one of them. So if I'm going to do this, I'm going to say that our word list for today is in the directory named user, share, Derbasta, then word lists. And then there's a lot of them in there. So there is Apache, let's pick the directory list one. Yeah, so directory list one, let's put that here. So I could copy that. So the same thing I was doing, I could just copy that here. Control C, replace it with this. So this is what I'm going to find. This is the directory I'm entering to find the user, the file I need. Now, probably it looks like this is all wishy-washy. What are we looking at? What does this file actually contain? So let's find it and see what it's there. So I'm going to file system, same place I went, user, share. Derbasta is the tool we are using. Most tools have their word list. So Derbasta, word list. And then I need this, the guy I'm looking for. So I'm going to double click. It's 1.7 megabytes. Now the file is open on the side. Okay, so my Kali is frozen. Let's hope it recovers. We give it a sec. All right. So can you see? Just a sec. Need to close a few things. All right. So this is what we call a directory list. The one we looked at last time was a password directory file. Now this is, sorry, that was a password dictionary file. But then this is a directory list. So it basically contains, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, there's your captain speaking. We are waiting for Kali to return to the runway, and then we'll proceed. So we'll give it a few seconds so as my Kali, gets into character, probably is shy or whatever it is. For some reason, it decides, and when it decides, there's nothing you can do about it. Let me pause recording. So our Kali is back once again. Recording is back as well. And so we are going back to the file we found. And then we're starting from number 15, and we have all these words going on here. These are not passwords. These are directories. It's going to assume, is there a file named toolbar? Is there a file named text? Is there a file named TV? Okay. Is there a directory or folder named any of these? And tell me if you have it. That's what these directory files are. So I'm going to close that, come back here, and I'm going to show you how this tool operates, which is Derbasta. I think some of you might have used it in the assignment. The IP was 5.5, I believe. And then Need to find it. So I'm going to go in here to find the file I just opened. User share debasta word lists directory list 1.0.txt. Okay, done. And then file extension is PHP. So this is what it's going to do. It's going to pick each word and then add .php to it to see if there's anything like that. Now, the reason why PHP is here by default is because WordPress was created in PHP. So most of the files have .php on it. If not, and it was a different maybe HTML, I would have done this. But because by default, PHP is here, and whatever thing we are looking for uses PHP. So I'm going to probably make it faster. Don't do this because it might slow down your machine. Now, I have the URL here. I have the 80 will be added by default because that's where it's going to go. So I'm going to start so that we see what we are getting. Now we have scan information. Can you do multiple separated by a comma? Yes, you can do multiple separated by a comma, Joseph. So if you are, so the scan information is going on, there's results where you are seeing whatever is happening in real time. Then you could also do a result in a tree view form where everything else is listed in this way, right? However, we are trying to, this is all interesting information. And it keeps giving, it keeps showing more and more and more, right? Now, all of this is nice, but in the end, it's going to take about 3 hours to finish or probably more. And we don't want to wait for that long. So at the end of the day, we might just cut it short at some point. And then I was waiting for one particular thing to show, but it looks like it's not even going to show today. So I'm going to stop this, go back, and then say that probably change this file from what we are using to user share. Not doing this again, not doing this again. So when I showed you the sites, there was a directory named WordPress, and that is what I'm trying to target. So I could say that start from WordPress because in the list, WordPress is really at the bottom. And I can't really wait to get to the bottom to do this. So I'm just going to say start at WordPress and let's see what you're going to give me. So start. And then it's going to start at WordPress. So it's going through it. WordPress with extension PHP. For some reason, okay, so it's found WordPress at this point. So there's a directory named WordPress. Now it's going to try to go in there to find out what other files are available in there. So we wait and then we feast. So this is what it gives us, right? But it's a bit messy, but at the same time, there are so many other websites available, and that's why it keeps going into all of the other pages. Now let's keep a leave directory basta. I'm going to stop. Now let's go to the next two we have on the bill today. Now we have go basta. And go basta, you need to specify what you want. Do you want the files or you want the directories? Most of the time, the directories are important. So we would go for directory because most files are hidden in directories. So we say directory, and then we specify, and then we specify the URL, which is whatever URL we're about to use. And in this case, it's 10.0.5, which is our target's URL. And then we don't want Go Basta to waste its time finding all the other directories because we've seen WordPress and we want to target that. So we are saying, Go Basta, can you go into the WordPress directory and then give us more information? So that is where I add WordPress there. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because if you remember, I'm trying to open my browser again. All these are directories on the server, right? So if I do a scan, it's going to find all of them. But I just want to focus on this WordPress site. I want to go deep into it. In your case, your WordPress site might have a different name, not WordPress. So once I clicked on it, this is what I get in the browser, 10.0.5.5/WordPress. So that is what we are going for, and that is what I did here. So then we need to specify what word list to use. So our word list is going to come, And then we put in the directory of the file we found. Now the deb common.txt you're seeing is an alternative to the one we literally looked at. There's another directory named deb, which does the same thing as deb buster. And it also has a word list. And we picked common.txt. So this is what it contains, as you can see over here. So I'm just showing you different word lists and what they could do. So if I click on enter, this is what I'm getting. It's going to go through all of these files, which are about, it's going to go through the list, which is 4,615. And then it's going to give us information. Now, you remember I mentioned that if you see 200, what does it mean in HTML response codes? What does it mean? What does 200 mean? What does response code? Yes, 200 means okay, meaning whatever we found was legit and is accurate. Now, 302 means that it's temporarily redirected, but then 301 just means that, hey, this is permanently redirected to this URL, WordPress/. All that they're asking is I should have added another slash. So if you do this, it would redirect you to this site. So that means these are also directories that we could check out. So in a way, this scan is pretty straightforward, pretty short, and it gives you the information you want. So we have all these which are legit. These are files, 200, 200, all of these are files. And then these ones are directories, which even DevBuster did not give to us. And then we have files again, and then on and on and on to the end. So this is what GoBuster does, which is an alternative to DevBuster. Now, the next tool we are looking at is Nikto. Now, Nikto also does a similar thing, but then Nikto is looking for vulnerabilities. So Nikto is going to be like, okay, you're giving me a WordPress site, but what am I looking at here? It's going to check the server type. So with Nikto, so the /dot file is mostly supposed to be hidden on the server, but some way, some of these tools are able to find them out. Yes, so dots are supposed to be hidden. Yeah, Joseph. But they just found them out, and if you go on the server, you see them there. But if you go through the browser, you're not going to see these files. So let's try one of the, let's try one of the directories, WP content. So if I put WP content, if I put WP content here, I get nothing. Now, this is a hint for your assignment. You are told that you are supposed to find a flag. Now, the flag is an image located on the WordPress website. Now, that image is just a card, like spades is a card with a face, and then it says Metasploitable flag. Now, you need to Google or you need to research on where WordPress stores its images. Now, if you find that, you may have to navigate to that in your browser, go through all the available directories, and then find a solution to the flag that is hidden. That is for the specialized kind of assignment. Go online, check for that information. Where does WordPress store images? Go through there, and then you're going to find the flag for the assignment. So that's a hint. So good things come to those who stay with us to the end. Just joking. So this is Nikto. We'll be done shortly. Probably in the next 10 minutes we'll be done or less. So Nikto, we have to specify the host name or the target, but we need to use H, and then you need to make sure that you notice that GoBuster did not need HTTP 10.0.5.5, but then Nikto needed the HTTP because we are going through a website. So I'm going to skip to the end, but then this format you're seeing here, all of these guys are not necessary. So if I do this, the scan is going to run correct, but I do format HTML so that I have a structured response or something I could look out for. So I do the format HTML so that I could just go and look for that file, and then all the response will be in there, structured properly for me. Otherwise, this is how the response will look like from Nikto. You have this, which is still raw. How do I go through all of this to find out what I'm looking for? So it tells us that the server that is running is Apache 2.2.4. So you could find if there's a vulnerability, you could search if there's a vulnerability for that. It's also telling you that it's running PHP version 5.3.2. You could also have that could also be very special. Now, it says that the XSS protection header is not defined. OpenSSL appears to be outdated. Python 2.6.5 is outdated. PHP is outdated, telling you that the current version is 7.2.12. So that way you're able to think of, okay, let me find a vulnerability for this. Let me see if this is going to work. Now, these are OSDV, Open Vulnerability Database, where it's telling you that check for this vulnerability, maybe it might help. I think it's still running, should be done shortly. But because I'm storing it in the file, we could just go into our Kali directory and then find that file. The name of that file could be anything. I need my nick.html. And so I'm going to go in here, find nick.html. Let me open that. And this is what I have. So this is more structured, as you can see. It's just saying that, okay, we got the sites, check this OSDV. Let's look for ones that are interesting. So everything that was listed there is now made properly, like so that you could consume it and read it and then not stress yourself over it. So it says that, okay, there is a plugin on the site named this, and that plugin could be vulnerable because you could go in there to find the output of another function. So on and on and on and on. And then it tells you that, okay, the README file can be read, which shows the installed version. So Nikto as a tool shows you vulnerabilities that you've not even thought about before. So now that we are done with Nikto, the last tool we are looking at is WP Scan. So now we found out all of this from the things we've done, which is we found the directories. Now we've gone on to scan the website for vulnerabilities. We found all of that, but we want WP Scan to give us more information, which is a specialized scanner for WordPress sites. So we are going to say, okay, WP Scan, I want you to scan a URL. Every tool has how it wants its commands to be. And to find these out, you just do a -H, and then they give you the manual of how you could, go through them. So in this way, it says that if you do that --URL, it means you can specify the URL. If you do Vim, it means verbose. So that's how we find out how to use these tools. So same command again, URL. I list out my HTTP, blah, 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 WordPress. And then once I press enter, it's going to go through the sites directly. Now, sometimes this tool needs the internet because if you're running it for the first time, it would want to update its database. Sometimes you have to make sure that you're connected to the internet when you're using it for the first time. How do you know what exploit to use for a given vulnerability from the result of the Nikto scan? So if we will go into finding the exploits to use at a later time. Today, we are doing lots of enumeration today. But for example, if it's telling me that Apache 2.2.14 is vulnerable, I would probably use a tool named Searchsploit, or I'll go onto Google and then say this, Apache 2.2.4 exploits. And then that way I'll get multiple answers. I'll get CVEs, I'll get exploit DB information. And the whole point is you have to try all of them. Pick out the ones that you know might work, or the ones that are high on the list, check which ones might work. Sometimes there might be no exploit for whatever vulnerability you found. It's not the time that you're going to find an exploit for it. So you just find out, okay, this is it. Okay, security vulnerabilities, let me check them out. But exploit DB is one of the best. So memory leak, you go in there, look through it, see the code, and then see if you could use it for the attack later. But we'll go into all of these things at a later time. I hope that answered your question, Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous. So where were we? WP scan. So WP scan is done. And it's also giving us the same information. Apache version, the Apache version is here. The Python version is here. There are two Pythons installed, 3.3.1 and 2.6.5. Now let's move down. It tells us some of the vulnerabilities it's found. let's go down and then see. So the theme that is being used on the site is also out of date, even though it's the default theme. And then it goes on to say that it's version 1.5 and it could be vulnerable. Now it tries to tell us the plugins that are installed. It gives us this information. So we've not logged into the site, but look at the information we are finding out all over the internet. Now it's going to try to enumerate to give us more info, but let's do one more scan and then we are done. We could say that I want you to enumerate, and then with enumeration, I could say just enumerate U, which is the users, or I could say PL, which is the plugins. Now let's just try users. If we are lucky, it could give us that information. So it's enumerating. All of these are the same as what we saw earlier, but the lower side is where we are interested in. Enumerating users, brute forcing author IDs, the people that created articles on the site. And what it found was that one user has been identified, and that user's name is admin. It was found by an RSS generator tool. And then they confirmed it because when they tried to log in, the error messages gave them that information. So by just using a tool like this, I'm able to find out that this particular site, the WordPress site, has a user named admin, and I could use that to brute force things later. So in this way, I've been able to gather information. And when you use the WP scan against the assignment, it's going to tell you that this particular directory is open and you could view the files. Do well to take a look at all of the information that is being provided, and then you're going to find out some interesting information. So that brings me to the end of today's class.